In this assignment, you will be configuring the navigation, and you will also be laying out these 5 different div items so that they lay out horizontally on the page. Notice that there are 5 and not 6, so it will be a bit unbalanced. Notice that they don't all necessarily have the same height, but that is fine. You will be doing this using the CSS float property. We will be doing this same assignment again using flexbox, and one more time using grid, so you can see how the 3 different CSS approaches work. Using the float property was the default standard for many, many years. However, you will learn that flexbox is much easier, and grid is also another way to approach page layout. We do have some sort of layout already existing here, setting a fixed width on our container elements and centering them in the page. It looks very nice and it is a common approach. However, sometimes we need to line up the elements side by side. This is what your page will start like. You will have an unordered list. Notice you cannot see the bullet points on the unordered list due to the dark background, but believe me, they are there. And we also have our 5 div container elements in a vertical layout here. So you will use the float property to place these elements side by side. You will use the float property to place the LI elements side by side. And you will also configure the navigation so that it looks nicer. The unordered list is used in industry standard navigation. If you just have 1 or 2 links inside a paragraph, you don't have to use an unordered list. However, this is something new that we're learning in this class. So we will use the nav element and inside the UL. Notice that I have the hash or pound sign as a value for the href. That is just so that in the event that you click a link, you will not get a file not found error message. Whenever I work with unordered lists, I find it very helpful to place some borders or an outline around the different parts so that we can actually see where things are. So I will start with putting an aqua border around the UL element. Notice that the UL element is a block element, meaning that it extends the full width of its parent container. It is inside the nav, and the nav is set at a fixed width. Now let's put a border around the LI elements and the A elements. So here we have our CSS, and again, this is just for testing and development purposes. Notice that the LI elements, which are enclosed in yellow, are also block elements, meaning they extend 100% the width of the parent container, which is the unordered list. Notice that the A elements are inline elements, therefore they will only be as wide as the container. Notice that we do have an indentation from the left-hand side of the UL element for the LIs. So we have found some valuable information here using our borders. We will first remove the bullet markers, and that is accomplished by using the list style type property set to none that is applied to the UL element. We will also remove that left padding so that the LI elements are no longer indented. In that manner, our navigation will be balanced inside the nav element. So now we see that everything is on the left-hand side. Now we are going to apply the CSS float property to the LI elements. Notice what happened. A few unexpected things. Our border around our UL element has collapsed. Also, our picture is now a little bit higher than it was. This is what happens when you use the CSS float property. Number one, the parent becomes what is called collapse, so there is no border. Number two, all of the content underneath moves up. So we need to clear that float so that we can have the proper effect that we want. The easiest way to do that is to set the overflow property to hidden for the unordered list. Now we have our navigation back. However, it doesn't look very pretty. Notice that our UL elements are no longer 100% width, but they are the size of the content. First, let's set some properties for our A element. Because we want the A element to be as big as its parent LI, we need to set the display property to block. Now, if we add some padding, it will add some room to each navigation block. If you wanted to make them all a fixed size, you could. If you wanted to add more padding to the right or left, you could. If you wanted to add a separator bar, you could. Notice because the A element is now a block level element, this cursor will be a hyperlink all the way around. Now we need to remove the underline on the hyperlinks, and it looks like everything is already centered inside the LI. If not, you would want to make sure that the text was centered, unless you wanted it on the left. So we will apply the text decoration with a value of none to our A element. Should you wish to do any other formatting to the A, you can. So now we have a rather nice looking navigation bar. Again, you can format and lay this out however you would like. Now we will apply the float property to our div element containers. So in our code, we have a section with an ID equals products, and here we have our 5 divs, and they are already styled for us. If you look at the code here, you see that all of the divs share a class called product. That class is applying the basic styles. We can use that class to apply our float property. So here I will apply the float property. Wasn't that easy? Well, with one exception. Now we see the area that was underneath the 5 breakfast items is now filling up the empty space. So we need to clear that float. So whenever you have a float going on, whatever is underneath will come up and continue to wrap as long as there is room. You almost always have to clear that float. This time we will clear that float by using the element that is underneath. If you go back to our source code, you see that underneath the div containing the 5 product items, we have another section with the ID equals contact. We will use that ID selector and clear that left float. So here is our syntax. Now we see that that float has been cleared and our page looks a lot nicer than when we started. So this is the assignment, and I'm showing you how to do it so that you can understand how to use the float property.